Learning objectives. After studying this module, learners will be able to know India opted for which economic model to follow. Describe major changes introduced in industrial and agricultural sector. Understand formation of Planning Commission and 5-year plan, that is FYP. Describe implementation of land reforms. Describe Green Revolution, its positive and negative effects. Politics and Development 1. Introduction. Traditionally, development can be understood as economic wealth or economic progress of a country, but for many, it has a different meaning. In India, everyone agreed that development should be a balance between economic growth and social justice. After independence, India faced many conflicts in making a series of major decisions. Development and conflict. Because of the rising demand for steel, the largest reserve or iron ore in the country, Orissa was the prominent investment's destination. State governments signed Memorandum of Understanding or MOU for bringing in capital investment and employment. Conflict arose as the tribal people feared displacement and environmentalists became worried about environmental pollution. Politics and Development 2. Political contestation. Agreeing on common points, where the issue resolved satisfies various interests. In a democratic country, the approval of these decisions should come from people themselves. Also, the advice can be taken from mining experts, environmentalists, and economists. But the final decision should be a political decision taken by people's representatives, keeping in feelings of the people. Social and economic justice. Independent India took a series of major decisions for economic development. But development meant both economic growth and social and economic justice. These type of decisions cannot be left alone to businessmen, industrialists, and farmers themselves. Role of government is important for ensuring justice. Now the question arises, should there be a centralized institution or government should be involved in some business and industries? All this is involved in the contestation, ever since it is required to study the process of development, which is a part of history of politics in India. Ideas of planning. Consensus. For government, need for planning or designing was required for development, so it could not be left alone to private actors. In the 1940s and 50s, idea of planning earned public support all over the world. Great Depression of Europe, the interwar reconstruction of Japan and Germany, and economic growth in the Soviet Union in the 1930s and 1940s contributed to the consensus. The Bombay Plan. It is believed that the private investors like industrialists and business entrepreneurs averse to ideas of planning an open economy of uninterrupted flow of capital. But in 1944, a joint proposal for setting up a planned economy was drafted by bigger section of industrialists. The Bombay Plan involved state in taking major industrial initiatives and economic investments. Planning Commission came into existence soon after independence, was the obvious choice for the country. 5-year plan. Planning. A systematic regulation of purposeful activity to achieve national goals is planning. India, being inspired by USSR for planning to provide basic necessities of life, that is medical care, technological skills and advanced education. Planning Commission of India was set up in 1950 with Prime Minister as its chairman, ministers in charge and some other members to be advisory in nature. Planning helps to reduce wastage of time and increase the per capita income. First 5-year plan. The first 5-year plan was released in 1951, drafted by economist K.N. Roy, aiming at land reforms, investment in dams and irrigation, and to raise the level of national income. It was different from the second 5-year plan, which stressed on heavy industries by bringing about quick structural transformation. Rapid Industrialization 1. Industrialization. Second 5-year plan or FYP emphasized on heavy industrialization even in rural areas, drafted by a team of economists and planners under the leadership of P.C. Mahalanobis. Criticized for the creation of prosperity in urban and industrial sections at the cost of rural welfare. Mixed economy. India not only followed capitalist or socialist economy but also adopted mixed economy to coexist private and public sector and to attain rapid economic development, aiming at social welfare and private-owned means of production, which is regulated by the state. Structural transformation. The second FYP brought quick structural transformation in all directions. Congress Party at its session held at Awadhi near the then Madras city passed the socialist pattern of society at its goal, which reflected in the second plan. Rapid Industrialization 2. Savings and investments. Tariffs on imports were imposed to protect domestic industries. Growth seen in public and private sector industries as savings and investments were growing industries like electricity, railways, steel, machineries, and communication could be developed in the public sector. Industrialization marked a turning point for the nation's development. Problems in industrialization. Being technologically backward, India spent precious foreign exchange to buy technology from the global market. The industry attracted more investment than agriculture, creating the possibility of food shortage. Finding a balance between industry and agriculture became difficult. The third-year plan was similar to the second. Critics pointed an unmistakable urban bias in the strategies. Industries were wrongly given priority over agriculture, and some wanted to focus on agriculture-related industries rather than heavy ones. Agriculture versus industry. Agriculture in India. Early years of development raised several questions like a backward economy like India, agriculture or industry, which attracts more public interest. About 3/4 of the Indian population was dependent on agriculture for employment and for the food and fiber consumed by farming families. During the early planning period, the agrarian sector has witnessed a serious attempt at land reforms. Rural industrialization. The second 5-year plan lacked an agrarian strategy for development as the emphasis was on industry, causing agriculture and rural India to suffer. Alternative blueprint proposed by Gandhian economists like J.C. Kumarappa laid emphasis on rural industrialization. Congress leader. Contestation arose from Congress leader Chaudhry Charan Singh, who broke from party to form Bharatiya Lok Dal for keeping agriculture at the center of planning for India. According to him, prosperity came for the urban and industrial section at the expense of farmers and rural population. States policy and critics. States policy. The policy restricts the import of goods which can be produced in the domestic market, leaving no competition left for the private sector. No option to gain incentives for improving and making their products cheaper. Involvement of the state was more than necessary, which led to inefficiency and corruption. Critics. Critics thought the state did not do enough by not spending any significant amount for public education and healthcare. According to them, the intervention was only in those areas where the private sector was not prepared to go, and state helped the private sector to make a profit. New middle class was created, which enjoyed privileges of higher salaries without much accountability. Poverty is that period did not decline. As per the proportion declined, numbers kept on increasing. State neglected the poor and carried out the benefits of the private sector. Land reforms. Zamindari system. Zamindars held enormous tracts of land and control over their peasants, from whom they reserved the right to collect tax on behalf of imperial courts or for military purposes. During that period of development, the most significant and successful attempt was the abolition of the colonial system of zamindari. It released land from a class not much interested in agriculture. Landlords' capacity was reduced to dominate politics. Components of land reforms. Consolidation of land, bringing small pieces of land together so farm size could become viable, was successful. The other two components, imposing ceiling on land holdings and awarding of the surplus lands rights to landless and tenancy reforms, were much less successful. Laws were made for how much agricultural land one person could own. People with excess land managed to evade the law. Tenants who worked on someone else's land were given greater legal security against eviction, but this provision was rarely implemented. Landowners. For turning these well-meaning policies on agriculture into genuine and effective action was not easy, was only possible if the rural, landless poor were mobilized. Landowners naturally resisted the implementation of these reforms by directly using their political influence and also by using various methods of evasion, which included registering their owned land under the name of different relatives to evade the ceiling and shuffling tenants around different plots of land. Thus, economic policy was not the part of the actual political situation in the society, and in spite of good wishes of some top leaders, the dominant social groups always effectively controlled policy making and the implementation. Later developments. Development took a significant turn from the end of 1960s after Nehru's death. Indira Gandhi emerged as a popular leader. She further strengthens the role of the state in controlling and directing the economy. From 1967 onwards, new restrictions were imposed on private industry. 14 private banks were nationalized. Many pro-poor programs were announced. These changes were accompanied by an ideological tilt towards socialist policies, which generated heated debates. Between 1950 and 1980, the Indian economy grew at a slow rate of 3 to 3.5%. Because of the lack of public faith, it led the policy makers to reduce the importance of the state in India's economy from the 1980s onward. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned in this module. After independence, India faced many conflicts in making a series of major decisions. During independence, there were two models of modern development, the liberal capitalist model like USA and Europe, and socialist model as in the USSR. The Soviet development model impressed many, including Communist Party of India and the Socialist Party and Congress leaders like Nehru. After independence, the Indian government took up the tasks of poverty, attenuation, social and economic redistribution, and development of agriculture as the prime responsibility. The Bombay Plan involved state in taking major industrial initiatives and economic investments. Planning Commission of India was set up in 1950 as an extra-constitutional body like USSR adopted for 5-year plans or FYP. The first 5-year plan was released in 1951, drafted by economist K. N. Roy, aiming at land reforms, investment in dams and irrigation, and to raise the level of national income. Second 5-year plan FYP emphasized on heavy industrialization even in rural areas, drafted by a team of economists and planners under the leadership of P.C. Mahalanobis. India not only followed capitalist or socialist economy, but also adopted mixed economy to coexist private and public sector. The agrarian sector witnessed a serious attempt at land reforms to abolish zamindari system, but these were not much success due to people violated laws under the considerable political influence, and some laws remained only on papers. The largest developmental projects of India's history, which includes mega dams like Bhakra Nangal and Hirakund for irrigation and power generation. Some of the heavy industries in the public sector like oil refineries, steel plants, manufacturing units, defense production, etc. was started during this period. US pushed India to change its economic policies. A new strategy for agriculture was adopted to ensure food sufficiency, Green Revolution.